Hello and welcome from the Chris Wessling Podcast Studio. It's Around the NFL, our Week 18 preview, a week in the NFL, unlike any we can remember, of course, with Damar Hamlin and everything that continues to unfold around the Bills' safety. Dan Hanzus here, Gregg Rosenthal, Marc Sessler. How we doing, boys?
I think in higher spirits after watching that press conference from the University of Cincinnati.
Absolutely. Dr. Timothy Pritz and Dr. William Knight spoke with the media, gave us updates on where Hamlin stands, who, of course, suffered the cardiac arrest during Monday's game against the Bengals, and we learned on Thursday that he has shown, quote, remarkable improvement over the past 24 hours, and this is huge as well, appears to be neurologically intact, according to the doctors. Speaking of the doctors, one of the things we learned, Mark, was that Hamlin was responsive, opening his eyes, and even in writing form asked if the Bills had won the game on Monday night, unaware, obviously, of everything that had transpired after he went down on the field. Here is what Dr. Pritz had to say.
To paraphrase one of our partners, when he asked, did we win? The answer is yes. Damar, you won. You've won the game of life. And that's probably the most important thing out of this. And we really need to keep him at the center of everything else that's going on. And we really want to ensure a good outcome for him.
They also mentioned that, he's shown the ability to move his hands and feet. He's able to nod to respond to questions. He's obviously not speaking verbally because he's, under their care at this point.
His breathing is still being helped as things stand.
Yeah.
It is, he's still seen. He's in the ICU as of right now, and he's still critically ill, as the doctor said. So it's not a situation where Hamlin is out of the woods, but just some really positive updates here right now, Greggy.
Yeah, just them talking at all was such a great sign, and you could tell, and I was amazed how many questions they answered and the details that they went through, and I think they made it clear that none of this was guaranteed from the moment that he went down, giving all the credit in the world to the Bills medical staff for acting so quickly and so perfectly within a minute, and that even when he got to the hospital that there were a lot of concerns, and that in the last 24 hours, some of those concerns, including you mentioned the neurologically being stable and him starting to progress, are making everyone that are surrounding this story feel better about his recovery, but they didn't want to push forward into what this all means moving forward. They just want to get him back up and running and be able to go home with his family.
Yeah, I thought that they, underlined over and over the job that the Bills medical staff did, and that the fact that the NFL's processes in place were so tight and pre-practice before this happened, and that the Bills doctors recognized what was going on in the nick of time. And had they not, things could be very different. But they absolutely did a great job with that.
And I'm not putting words into anyone's mouth, but just by what the doctors were saying, the way things transpired, how they transpired, what he, although we don't know specifically what actually the medical event was beyond the cardiac arrest, this could have and perhaps should have been a fatal event. But instead, it was his age, they said, his fitness, and the medical care, which arrived in less than a minute, and world-class medical care arriving almost instantaneously. It saved the kid's life, and it's a remarkable confluence of events here, obviously, that transpired, and we're still kind of processing and learning all these things as they go along, but it's a unbelievable kind of life event, and we're all kind of tracking it in real time. Let's get into the games. We usually start with the primetime games, and we will. We'll hit the primetime games. So let's start with an afternoon game because we have two games scheduled for Saturday. Okay, let's start with the Chiefs at Raiders, 4:30 p.m. from Allegiant Stadium in Vegas, and this is one of the games that's impacted. So the Chiefs right now, for instance, are a team that, based on if Monday night's game played out in a certain way, they would be on the outside looking in potentially for the number one seed in the AFC. They now have a chance to claim the number one seed in the AFC with a win over the Raiders, depending on how the league proceeds forward. But first, they need to take care of business against the Raiders, that a team that is now not playing for anything in terms of the playoffs, Las Vegas, but the Chiefs certainly are.
Yeah, we'll have to see on the seeding because the NFL, there's been a lot of things thrown out there, and there's a lot of options that could end up affecting what their seeding is. But either way, they're going to really want to win this game to get a higher seed and to have home field for as long as possible in the playoffs, depending on what the NFL decides to do. And I don't count this as just like an automatic W, just because every Chiefs game is complicated lately.
Yeah.
Whether it's against the Broncos, whether it's against the Texans, or whether it's against Jarrett Stidham.
Jarrett Stidham.
I mean, that was the most surprising performance by any single player I can think of this season. He balled out.
Yeah.
I know he made a couple bad plays too here. One bad interception really, and then the other he got hit. But he played incredible in that game. Those weren't like fluky plays. He showed an athleticism and movement, like throwing to his left, all this stuff that I have no idea if that'll ever happen again or not. But he showed some real physical gifts that makes me more interested in watching this game than I would have been with Derek Carr.
And it happened across from Brock Purdy, who's produced some of the most incredible performances that we never would have predicted across the field. And I think, the Niners were obviously, because they've been so airtight as a defense, caught off guard by Jarrett Stidham. And I think how aggressively Josh McDaniels, allowed him to be early on. That Stidham out of nowhere, because, we've seen him with the Patriots, and he looked like a regular dude. And out here, he was firing aggressive shots downfield, looking like he had practiced with Davante Adams for weeks on weeks. And at one point, he had never thrown for more than 72 yards in a game. He had 246 yards and 3 touchdowns before his first real mistake, that tipped interception.
Yeah, I was struck, just like you guys, how comfortable he looked leading the offense, how confident he clearly was, and maybe he's just like kind of a swaggy dude. I don't know much about Stidham, but you could tell he was a guy.
I watched every preseason snappy every
swaggy
didn't feel swaggy there.
He certainly seemed like it, right up to like shots to the luxury suites with his wife with the Stidham shirt, celebrating. Everybody almost like seemed in the Stidham universe like, no, this guy can play and he's going to ball out, and he certainly was showing that on the field. And I did see some of the reporting out there connected to the Raiders, like, well, yeah, like he knows and understands Josh McDaniels' playbook, insinuating in a way that Derek Carr didn't quite grasp, and that explained why he looked more comfortable than even Carr in the McDaniels offense. All that's kind of interesting, and we'll get back to the Chiefs in a second, but set against the backdrop of the big splash that was supposed to make the Raiders a AFC contender this year was Davante Adams joining the Raiders, and he's been as good as it advertised this season. But he also went there in large part the way it was spun to us on some level because his buddy Derek Carr was there. Derek Carr ain't going to be there next year, and Davante Adams spoke with the media on Wednesday explaining, this is where things stand with me and my future here, but I want a voice.
Me, Josh, Ziggs, we all got a really good dynamic, and it's something that I really appreciate, and I've mentioned it to them as well. Obviously they don't have to do anything as far as I'm not a part of the front office, but obviously they know the reason why I came here, and a step like this is obviously something that means a lot to me and in my personal career, and obviously what I'm trying to chase as far as the ultimate pursuit to get that ring. So we obviously got a good understanding for one another, and that helps this whole process.
I think you got to give him a voice. You can't have an unhappy Davante Adams a month into next season. Where they stand right now, the Raiders have the number 7 overall pick. The whispers are that you might get Tom Brady. It would be hard to imagine Davante Adams being too nonplussed about the idea of Brady coming into a system where he knows the Josh McDaniels playbook as well. I can't imagine that Jarrett Stidham is a real option no matter what happens.
He's a free agent, though, so it's a big game for him. It's a big game for McDaniels. There's been actually almost a recurrence of some thought that Mark Davis could pull a surprise if the end of the season had gone bad, but I think 500 yards on the number 1 defense in the league against the 49ers, and then this game against the worst red zone defense in the league. Chiefs put up some points that with Jarrett Stidham, I think you'll look better. But I also don't. I've been talking about the Raiders. It's not like I'm picking the Raiders to win this game. The Raiders defense are playing guys I've never heard of at this point. Very quietly, half of their starting defense, which already was bad, got injured, and they're playing a guy. Their linebackers last week were Luke Masterson and Harvey Lange. Sounds like a detective show.
Yeah,
from
it
the
does.
80s.
This was the game, by the way, where the Raiders were up 17. This is one of the earliest earmarks of what they've been doing all season. They were up 17-0 against the Chiefs in that game where Travis Kelce had 3 touchdowns and Mahomes had 4 by the end of the game. But there you go.
Yeah.
Get the lead, give up the lead.
I wrote this week that the Raiders season is very Vegas in general. They lost ultimately, but it was entertaining. They had a good time. And Patrick Mahomes, especially with Jalen Hurts missing the last couple of weeks, seems like this is where he could put the finishing touches on another MVP. He is, as someone who hasn't been as pumping up Mahomes as much this year, he's over 5,000 yards with 40 touchdowns this year on a team that could be the number 1 seed. So
the next quarterback has 34 touchdowns.
Right, like last week was a
so.
perfect example. Like he it felt like played perfect. They still somehow barely beat the Broncos. He's making crazy plays. I think they're really trying to develop Kadarius Toney for the playoffs as one of their main weapons.
And also Jerick McKinnon having 7 touchdowns since week 13. Great look for Jerick McKinnon, but also it's a great look for Patrick Mahomes and his greatness. Okay. Let's move on to the other primetime game. Let's bring in the Gravedigger. That was the Gravedigger.
Yo.
Justin, how are you, buddy?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Long week for all of us. Hope you're doing okay, bud. The Tennessee Titans, your team, losers of 400 straight. Is that the correct number?
I think it's 6.
It
but
feels like 400.
Like 400 yeah.
They're 7-9, but they can win the AFC South. I think it's even because Week 17 was so kind of weird and annoying in terms of the AFC South setup that it just kind of put everything into purgatory. But now here we are, and as bad as the things have gone for the Titans, if they have one good night on Saturday, they got a home game in the playoffs next week, and I know we don't necessarily feel great about them as a postseason team, but that's how close they are. But they get the Jaguars here, Gravedigger, who have gone in the opposite direction. They're winning every week. I know your confidence isn't high, but is there something in your heart as a fan that thinks they could maybe figure out something here?
I actually think the Titans can win this game. Now, they're the healthiest they've been in a while. That still includes like Ryan Tannehill, 2 starting offensive linemen, Bud Dupree, Zach Cunningham, all on injured reserve, so they're not exactly healthy, but the healthiest they've been. And the Jaguars have won 4 straight, starting with the last game against the Titans, so that kind of kicked off the Jags' winning streak. This is a sort of revenge game. The Titans have way more experience in these big games under Mike Vrabel. Obviously, Josh Dobbs, starting at quarterback, has the least experience.
He's really convincing himself
of
here.
anyone.
Yeah,
but
let him go.
I think the defense can play at a higher level because they're healthy. The game against the Cowboys last week actually gave me confidence. They were able to keep it close. The offense looked a lot better than it has with Malik Willis, with Josh Dobbs starting at quarterback. The Jags are a good team. They're hot. They're playing some of their best football right now.
Is he gonna?
But everyone's picking the Jags. I saw an article today that rounded up the expert picks. 20 picking the Jags, 0 picking the Titans. Nobody thought the Titans could get the 1 seed last year. No one thought they deserved to get it.
Lock it up.
They did it anyway. No one thinks the Titans should be in the playoffs. No one wants to watch them in the playoffs. They know it. Everyone knows it. The Titans are winning this game. I'm locking it up.
Beautiful. And I'll bring some sanity to the proceedings, and we'll enter into a lock-off. I'll take the Jaguars.
Yeah, same. That was my plan.
Wow. First lock-off of the season.
This is why Gravedigger is sitting in last place. The Titans are 30th in offensive DVOA since everything's fallen off the floor in Week 13. I mean, they are inept. They and the Bears are the only teams without a wide receiver that have over 500 yards in the season. And so you're really counting on a big game from Derrick Henry. And the one thing you can do against the Jaguars, metrics-wise, you can run on the inside against them between the tackles. And Henry's done that before. He had a big game against them last time. But in that same game, that's where they got up against Jacksonville. And Jacksonville unfurled 29 straight points on them. And you started to see the new version of Trevor Lawrence, who looks utterly unstoppable at this point.
And it's unfair to get on Derrick Henry because there's not a lot around him. But when they've needed him to be Superman again this year, he hasn't quite been that way. And he's fumbling the ball a lot. And, it's all
He's
part
coming
of
off
a greater whole.
Though. He's coming off a week off.
That matters.
He can run. I was impressed. You actually are making me think maybe this isn't the best lock in the world.
Move off it.
We could sweat it out for sure because they showed something in the running game last week. They were able to run the ball with their 4 new offensive linemen.
Yeah.
And who was even running? Was it Haskins last week? I don't even remember at this point.
Chestnut, Julius.
Chestnut. They
Jonathan
actually
Ward.
Justin,
they had a pretty good running game against the Jaguars. It's a division game. You mentioned the guys that are back in the secondary for Tennessee, so at least it gives them a chance. Amani Hooker and Christian Fulton. And Trevor Lawrence the last 2 weeks hasn't been on fire. He did not play well against the Texans.
Well, they didn't need him to do much last week.
No, they didn't, but
they
he
yanked him in the third quarter.
But he missed a lot of throws. It was his worst game in a while. And the Jets game was a weather game. I just if Mike Vrabel is as good as we've pumped him up to be, they will be competitive in this game and will sweat it out a little, but I still feel okay.
I do think that it was a savvy move to take the shot at looking at Dobbs versus Malik Willis, because that Malik Willis just did not look ready. And Dobbs, we get it. He is just sort of mezzanine level, fill in the blank quarterback here, but he is much more competent than Willis in terms of I think they can expand the offense a little bit. They must feel more comfortable with him.
I feel like he could either be amazing or they'll lose. I was just saying they'll be competitive. He could be the reason they win this game or the reason they lose pretty quickly. Because in that game, it was sort of the opposite to me. Was he made 5 or 6 incredible throws, but he also made some things you would expect out of Dobbs. It was very up and down. He had some next level plays that were okay, I see why he's playing. But he also looked like a guy who had been there for 10 days.
He threw one straight to Trevon Diggs. Right. It should have been a pick 6, and Diggs
it was a lot of everything. It showed something with Willis.
His pocket awareness wasn't great. He fumbled twice and didn't really step up.
I thought it was a little overplayed, including on the telecast, about his level of play compared to Malik Willis. I think he was maybe net neutral in the end. It was some plays up here and then plays way down here. But I guess that's more than you saw from Willis. And
I think Vrabel just completely verbally
lost. He looked like an NFL quarterback.
Willis.
He looked like an NFL quarterback. Willis had
backup quarterback.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Kind of like in a perfect scenario, a Ryan Fitzpatrick or Heineke type that might hit some big-time
get hot.
plays.
He just has to keep the offense on schedule and protect the ball. Titans turned it over 4 times in the last game against the Jags. If they hadn't done that, it's a totally different game.
Right.
But they did do that.
It's been a horrible month and a half, but you just got to get hot for 3.5 hours.
There you go.
That's it.
Yeah.
This is an ESPN game, by the way.
Just have some balls bounce your way. It'll be fine.
Buck and 8 minutes.
Have some balls in general. Step up and salvage your year.
What we definitely need is another week of this Texans team. So I'm totally with you, Gravedigger. I hope this goes
Texans,
well for you.
You meant Titans.
Titans.
That's embarrassing.
Happens
Too
a lot.
late. Can't fix it now. Let's take a break.
We
we'll be right back.
Around the NFL is brought to you by Verizon, the network America relies on.
We got to be realistic about where we're at. We've played a couple subpar games the last 2, so we got to play better.
And it is picked off by the Lions. 3rd interception for Aaron Rodgers.
Should the Packers shut him down?
They have a duty to see what they have in Jordan Love.
I would like to see Jordan play if I was a Packer.
Thrown touchdown passes many times. I don't give a shit what these experts on TV.
Rodgers throws. Watson, touchdown!
Definitely haven't had a lot of believers outside the locker room, I don't think, so maybe this will give us a couple on the bandwagon.
Touchdown, Green Bay!
We had to win 5 and then have a lot of things go our way. So we won 2, and just about everything we've needed to happen has gone our way.
The Packers are alive in the playoff picture.
Things are looking up.
Rodgers, touchdown! Touchdown! Aaron Rodgers scores. It is 40-3.
Not many people in that locker room, and definitely not many of you people, believe we'd be sitting here at 8-8 as we went from 4-8 to 5-8 to 6-8, and nobody's worried about the Packers and blah 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 blah. Now what are you gonna say?
All right, we are back. Let's. So that was Saturday's slate, January 7th. Let's move to the primetime game. January 8th, Sunday Night Football. The last game of the regular season, probably? I don't know. We'll see. Detroit Lions at Green Bay Packers. Love it. Love it. Mark, they did it. I haven't been on board with a lot of the decisions of the powers that be in the schedule room for the NFL this year. But even though there's a possibility that the Lions are eliminated by the time this game gets played, I think this is great theater. I think the Packers are playing great. Aaron Rodgers, the back-to-back reigning MVP, is on the field. It's Lambeau, and Detroit has been this great story all season long. And there is also a reality where things go their way. Seattle loses earlier on Sunday, and all of a sudden you have an awesome playing game headed into the postseason.
I certainly prefer the latter, but I accept the former because I think that this Lions team And, Greg, you talked about this last week too. It's like no matter where they are in this situation, this season is a major win for the coaching staff, for the players, for guys like Jared Goff. And you're not going to get any version of them because they've been knocked out of a playoff race that they're going to not try. They're going to absolutely do everything they can. You are facing, though, I think another great story, and I can't believe I'm saying this because I've never been pro-Packers, but what Aaron Rodgers has done with this team and what they've done in general with their defense to win all these games, to get to this place. He's 5-0 in his career and winning in games. It's in Lambeau. They're a completely different team than they were a month ago. I think this will be a huge challenge for Detroit, who, listen, it's not like outside of the dome they're defunct. It's not true.
Do it?
No, I'm not touching this one. But I'd find them in Green Bay at night. It's going to test who they are. No, I'm not going to do it.
You gonna do it?
You're right. It's a major test. The whole idea of, earlier in the week that the Seahawks fans were upset about. If the Lions were 7-9 going into this game and already eliminated, no one would be complaining, and this would be the game. So I sort of don't understand why anyone would have any problem with them if they're eliminated on Sunday and this being the game. You know what I mean? All the other teams that are playing on Sunday that, quote, don't have anything to play for versus teams that are, it's like they're all showing up. It's like the Browns against the Steelers, and they're playing that game. I guess the argument is they'd be so emotionally disappointed, but I just don't think that's how football works. These are professionals. I love the way Campbell handled it. I love the way Pete Carroll handled it, too. It's they both were saying, please, we're showing up. We want to end the Packers season. Hopefully we'll have a chance to go to the playoffs. But this would be maybe one of the greatest wins in Lions history if they won this game, even if they already are eliminated. Plus, you get the win feeling that way and the season feeling that way. I think they can do it with their running backs. This is how the Lions season turned around, was beating this Packers team. Was a bit of a fluky game where they were outplayed but had a bunch of turnovers in the red zone. But Jamal Williams in that game was great, and Jamal Williams looks fresh, looks awesome. DeAndre Swift looks as good as he's looked all year. That's the way you attack this Packers defense, is with power running, and I think that's who the Lions are. I think they'll be going for fourth downs. I think they'll be running once they get off the bus, and I think they're built to do so.
I would love to see one thing happen in this, because Jamison Williams, we've seen little moments here, and the Lions could use sort of, I wouldn't say a secret weapon, but a weapon you're not expecting to play a bigger role. His one catch is a 41-yard touchdown catch. His one other touch is a 40-yard rush in Week 17. It's like, this guy, there's something about him when you watch him. It's like, he has not been part of the plan all year. Green Bay's developed some electric weapons over the last month plus where it's like they're a different team because of it. I would love to see Williams play a larger role in this and be a difference maker.
I mean, it would be cool, but they also are now up to 8 games this year with 30 or more points. The Lions, that's a team record, and they're going to score points. And I know the Packers have played better. The last time they kind of got the real heat put on them was that Miami game where they were getting lit up in the first half by Tua, and then he suffers a head injury. We don't know the specifics around that, but that allowed, I think, potentially in part for them to steal that game with the 3 late interceptions. Greggy, remember back in November, I believe it was, you and I had locked up the Packers, who had lost, I believe, 6 of 7 at that point. They were 4-8 at the time, and I'm looking at this box score with 1 minute and 7 seconds to play in the third quarter against the Bears. They had Chicago had an 83.8% win probability, up 19-10 in that game, with the Packers sitting at 4-8. The Packers rallied to win that game, and they haven't lost since. So, yes, as annoying as, Mark, the Packers can be, and I know you've come around on them this year a little bit, it really would be a fairly remarkable turnaround if they end with the dub and get to the dance.
And the Lions season, ironically, or coincidentally, started against the Packers. They were 1-6 at that point. They were coming off the bye when they won that game where they forced the red zone turnovers against the Packers. I love this game, and I think they want to force Aaron Rodgers to play hero ball, to get away from their running game, because I think that's where the Packers can win. and just him sitting back there trying to make a play. And I think he did a lot of that against Minnesota, and it didn't really work. It didn't matter. They put up a 40-burger, and he played fine. He wasn't a problem. But the Lions are a pretty good pass rush right now with all their young players, Houston and Hutchinson and Pascal and everyone. If they can get the Packers to get a little pass-heavy like they were early in the season, I think they can win. I'm picking the Lions to win this
I don't
game.
think it's a hero ball world for Aaron Rodgers right now. He's thrown 4 touchdowns since Week 13. He's looked, I just think, a little more mundane than we'd expect for a 2-time MVP.
I think he's trying, though. I think he's like, his offensive line's playing better, though, and so he's having faith in them to protect him, and he's kind of sitting back there waiting to make a big play.
Normally what comes out of the mouth of Aaron Rodgers, I find often slightly tedious and pressing on my patience, but I think he's been different in the last couple weeks. He talked last week, he's like, they need me to be a better leader. They need me to be someone they can lean on, and that's not something Aaron Rodgers was really even acknowledging verbally the same way before. I think there's just something about this Packers team that's different than the old 13-3 act where you roll into the playoffs and get knocked out. Like, I kind of like this version better where it's like you're clearly the underdogs. You're not a perfect team. They very easily in certain scenarios could wind up playing the Niners if they got into the playoffs, which would be a nice little dose of revenge for what happened to them a year ago.
Yeah, and then they'll just get beat by the Niners in the
well,
playoffs, 38-20 like they do every year.
For once, I'm trying to do what you want and give some Green Bay some love here.
I'm just saying it does feel inevitable in that stretch, but they got to get there first. Let's move to the draft, Mark. You have in the final week. This is our final. No, we'll have drafts.
Well, not really.
Not really.
No,
this is the last kind of real draft, and you have the first pick. Congratulations.
I do. And
remember when you were
I
annoyed
think this is the final draft. We usually just go through the others in order.
Playoffs we watch together, arm in arm.
Remember way back in week 1,
you
were like, I'm annoyed now because Gregg had second pick, and I had first pick. But look how the worm turned.
Well, it was just presumed that Gregg would go second. There was no logic to it other than you decided that.
But then Gregg all season long has been grumbling about how bad his first picks have been. And, and now you have the final first pick. So look who came out on top in the end.
I guess I did. From that angle, I won't fight it. I'm going to go Ravens at Cincinnati.
Sometimes you got to pump that positivity into Mark and then just see what comes back out.
I think I'm trying to be as positive as possible in this situation. I'm going to go Ravens at Bengals. This was a strange game the last time they played. I think it was a different version of this Bengals team before they started to become the Bengals that we really believed in down the stretch. It's obviously, we can't measure this at all, but it's a strange situation for, I think, Cincinnati to even take the field again. It's been such a weighty and heavy week for them. At the same time, I think they showed us what a tight team they are, and their coaching staff, I think so much more of who they are person to person for how they led through this. You're playing a Ravens team to me that, it sounds like no Lamar Jackson. He's not practicing again on Thursday here. Rap Sheet told Pat McAfee that basically the Ravens are confident that Lamar Jackson will return for the playoffs. So maybe it's just like, let's rest him again. We don't know exactly what's going on there. It's been 32 days as of today that he's not practiced or appeared in a game. And so this is not.
I like that Rap Sheet sprinkles in these little pops on McAfee.
He knows it's going to get out there.
I know. I'm saying that's a good move, but maybe can he not say that exactly on NFL Network because it's more of like a feeling.
I think it's got it. I don't think it's just a feeling. I would imagine it's coming from
sources.
Yeah, but it's like if you're going to go star on a different vehicle.
If it doesn't come from the Washington Post, I'm not interested.
Well, that's an accurate way to approach life there, Dan. I don't know. Without Lamar Jackson, they were a bit of a messy passing offense before he left, but they have averaged 11 fewer points per game with Tyler Huntley in there. And I'm a little disappointed in Huntley because I thought what we saw last year was like a backup who kind of fit what they do and was adequate, and he's really been a huge mess. And I think part of it is, like you saw last week, where he had like 10 targets caught and 100 yards to Mark Andrews, and the rest of the offense, passing-wise, totaled 30 yards. They can run the ball real well. I don't really think that what you're looking at here with Cincinnati, if they play up to speed, the Ravens' defense is very good. I just think Cincinnati is not going to fold here. They're too powerful. My one concern, because we didn't really see this, obviously, with what happened in the Bengals game, is that you still don't have La'el Collins for the rest of this season. And Hakeem Adeniji, who we've talked about, who was a villain down the stretch for them on that offensive line, is playing a major role at this point.
Yes,
well, he was a villainous character.
He struggled.
Maybe not personality-wise.
Right.
Yeah.
Player, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yes.
PFF-wise.
Yeah. It should not be left unnoted that once again, Greggy, the Baltimore defense, which has been the best thing they've had all season, let down in a big spot on Sunday Night Football when they needed to get one stop against Pittsburgh. They would have won that game at the end. I know they were good overall in that game, but this is now, you can count maybe on one hand, it might be up to 4 or 5 games at this point where the defense had a chance to close the game out and could not do it. In this case, it could end up costing them the division because, again, going back to the uncertain nature of things, and again, as we tape this, things could change. It's fluid, but the Ravens are 10-6. The Bengals are 11-4. If the Bengals don't make up that last game, and let's say the Ravens win on Sunday, they finish 11-6. Bengals 11-5. Ravens sweep the head-to-head series, but it won't matter because the Bengals would have a better win percentage. That would not be the case if they took care of business on Sunday against Pittsburgh.
The great likelihood is the Bengals have already won the AFC North. The expectation, the reporting is that, and this is from the Associated Press, that the game between the Bengals and Bills will not be made up for. And they're trying to figure out what else to do. As of this taping, it'll be clarified. But that would make the Bengals the division champ. And it's interesting because if they would actually have probably played this game later if they knew that when they when they said this time. But it doesn't matter because it affects the Chargers game. The Chargers have already said they will rest their starters if the Ravens lose early because then they will not be playing for seeding. The Lamar Jackson thing is really interesting to me because it's so similar to last year, and they said it wasn't going to be similar to last year, and
same thing.
It's really been the same thing. I don't think Huntley's been a mess, Mark. I think he's played fine. It's just this whole thing is a mess. I think he's played as one of the better backups in the league, and they just have a slow-moving offense. He makes some good plays each week. He's not going to make a difference, and there's no reason to think that the Ravens' defense, which maybe is a little bit better than the Bengals' defense, is going to be that big of a difference maker when the difference between the Bengals' offense and the Ravens' offense is this gigantic chasm. The only thing that is an X factor, as you mentioned, that we have to talk about, and there's no way to know, is just the effects of this last week. And I thought it was Joe Burrow really open and honest about it, saying look, if you ask people in the locker room if they even wanted to play this week, and this was on Wednesday, and I think as each day goes by, the players are saying they're feeling better, it feels different, that they would have been mixed on it. That even he felt mixed on it, that they might not be ready to play again totally. And so it's just going to be an unprecedented scene for them and especially for the Bills.
They're going through something that no teams really had to deal with, 2 teams.
And we'll get to the other team in just a minute. But just one more thing on Lamar, because the initial reporting last month now, or about 4 weeks ago, was that he would be back week 16, which was Christmas Eve. That didn't happen. And then he wasn't back last week, and then he's on the sideline on Sunday Night Football with, as reported by people on the scene, with a hitch in his step, still just being on the sideline. And now it looks like he's not going to practice and play in week 18 potentially. And you wonder, first of all, what was the status of the knee injury? Did he have a setback? Also, you think about his contract status, Greggy, and where he might be mentally as he enters the most important financial period window of his life, how he's playing this.
Well, and why would we suddenly? Who's suggesting there's a large confidence that 6 or 7 days from now, if he's walking with a hitch and he's not practicing at all, that he's going to suddenly be ready for a playoff game? It's
Ian is that person. So maybe
he also reported the week 16 return as well, didn't he, Ian?
Yeah, and you do wonder if that's
that's what he's being told. So what are the Ravens saying here?
Is that the feeling from the team? I just wonder how the Ravens are going to approach this game too. If they know they can't win the division, do they care about winning the 5 seed versus the 6 seed? Now, I think they should. You would play at the AFC South winner instead of at Cincinnati, Kansas City, or Buffalo. That's a pretty big difference.
Yes, it is.
But I don't know if they'll look at it that way.
They don't feel like a team like the Ravens under Harbaugh are not a sit and rest everyone type of team or rest major.
And I respect the Jaguars and what they've been building in the last 6 weeks or so, but I'm sending
a huge difference
to Jacksonville
absolutely.
If I have the opportunity. All right, let's talk about the other team that was involved in Monday night. The Bills, that will be my pick. Patriots at Bills. Buffalo entered Week 17 as the number 1 seed. We'll see if even with a win in Week 18 whether they stay that way, because there's a potential here where the Chiefs end up with a higher winning percentage if they don't make up Monday night. So keep that in mind. So the Bills, though, still have a chance at the number 1 seed if they take care of business against the Pats, who also nobody really wants to see, other than Patriots fans, the Pats in the playoffs. But I kind of respect, Greg, the stubbornness that they might just get there to spite us. They might punch their ticket. They need to win. Obviously, you don't know what version of Buffalo you're going to get in this game. Joe Burrow said, the Cincinnati players, some players are split on even wanting to play. Can you even imagine what Damar Hamlin's actual team is feeling right now as they begin preparation for an AFC East rivalry game with their opponent playing for their postseason lives? It creates a complete unknowable situation once again, how the Bills respond and what version of the team shows up. And for the Patriots, they can only play their opponent, and it could work in purely football terms in their favor because they are the inferior team. But they have an opportunity here to get the Bills at a time that's a very uncertain time around what I think is the best team in the AFC.
I thought it was telling in some press availability or some sourced reports, one by Jeremy Fowler, that when Damar Hamlin's dad addressed the Bills team via Zoom, that it really galvanized the team. That they felt like they were able to smile after that, that they cheered as if it was like winning the Super Bowl, listening to the dad, hearing him be lighthearted at some moments and just positive, and that they almost felt like, okay, now we can move on. There's just no way this scene is going to be unlike anything else. So it's hard to know how much to put that into this game, but I know that these teams aren't even. I know that the Bills absolutely own the Patriots, that the last 3 games, including the game this year, were so one-sided. It didn't look like they were playing the same sport practically. And I do think there are elements that are a little different this time around. I think the Bills' offensive line, the Bills' offense has a few cracks in the armor, and the Patriots' defense is certainly rushing the passer well. Christian Barmore, they're different, but they're pretty banged up in the secondary too, where maybe the Patriots defense can keep the score down so it's not embarrassing, but I don't see any reason to believe in a normal situation that the Patriots offense isn't going to blow this game 2 or 3 different times, and that ultimately the Bills win comfortably.
Right. I mean, they've not matched up well with Buffalo 2 years in a row, and this Buffalo team is essentially the same team in many ways. And I just feel your point, Greg, about his father speaking to them, and then that the fact that we're getting positive news, that we are in a different place than we were a couple days ago. That doesn't mean that for a number of people it won't be an element of trauma to returning to the field at all. But you're in Buffalo. I think you're going to get a crowd that is as loving and supportive and galvanized as you're going to see all season long. I think the Bills are the type of team that will feed off of that. And I think there's a very human element to this game. And I think from an on-field perspective, New England just does not scare you on offense on any level. So the Bills need to do just enough on that side of the ball, their offense. And I think you got Josh Allen, who owns this team. I think it's a great place for Stephon Diggs, who hasn't had 100-yard games since Week 10, to re-galvanize his connection with Allen.
He was on his way on Monday night.
Sure.
You could tell the way that game was setting up that he was going to have a monster game.
I think they're determined to make
Cincinnati.
that happen again before the playoffs. And so I just think this is a thing where it's going to be a process the next couple of days. But Buffalo, this is the team you want to be playing in Week 18 to go into the playoffs and reset the board here a little bit from an on-field football perspective.
That's an amazing fan base, obviously, in general, but that is going to be, in Western New York, a very special, raucous vibe. And you can imagine they could even have some pregame visitors involved in terms of getting the crowd amped, connected to Damar. That's going to be a great scene to watch.
There were a couple of key injury updates in this game. Jack Jones had been put on IR, which I don't know if we had mentioned, for the Patriots, and Marcus Jones is still out of practice, so they're down a couple cornerbacks. Sounds like they will get back Jalen Mills. He's limited. Jacoby Myers, who got hurt late in that game on the touchdown catch, is limited. They might get back Devontae Parker. And then Teron Johnson, who took that vicious hit early in that Bengals game, who's a really important player for them with the concussion, is back at practice too. And there is a scenario, Dan, and it's not that far-fetched, that the Patriots lose and make the playoffs. It's pretty simple. They're in the spot right now. If everyone loses, they stay in the spot. And so,
we lose if that happens.
I think so. And it might be a rematch of this game again too, which no one in New England certainly would want. But yeah, it would be the Patriots losing, the Dolphins losing, the Steelers losing, and the Jaguars winning because they need the Jaguars.
But that is not that highly improbable.
No.
Buffalo take care of business.
We shall see if they do. And one more note on the Pats. Same as it ever was with this team. They will have one drive where they look functional. It'll be a 80-yard touchdown drive at some point in the game, just one. They'll need the defensive score again. They've gotten 7 of them this year, so they'll need a defensive or special team score. And then Josh Allen's going to have to make some mistakes. That's the path to an upset win.
It is also, if you're Mac Jones, your last chance to have a meltdown on the sideline on national television. It's your last chance to kind of explode at your coordinating duo of clown car coaches.
All right, let's take a break, and the draft will roll on. All right, welcome back. Here we go. Week 18 preview. We are to the third pick of the draft, and Gregg Rosenthal.
Did anyone ever actually call you Greggy before Dan in an actual serious sense?
I mean, I don't know how anyone can call me Greggy in a serious sense.
Oh, I'm dead serious.
My mom did sometimes.
All right. Well, then you're connecting back to his
That's a good woman to be connected
his
to.
early childhood.
Yeah, I would just say.
So basically, the two most important figures in his life, aside from his wife and children.
Yeah.
My mom and then my father figure, Dan.
Yeah. I wouldn't even throw a beside. I don't need to qualify with a beside.
The direct family?
I'm saying you could be higher than you even think in that pecking order.
It was a presumption on my part, and I shouldn't have done it. All right.
Maybe sandwich in between the two children in the rankings. I don't know.
My beautiful Greggy. Go ahead, buddy.
All right. You took Patriots Bills. I'm going to take the Jets. I'll take the Jets Dolphins. Why not? It's the only game that's interesting early.
Trying to hurt me?
No, but it's the only one that's left that's any good early. I'll take it.
It doesn't track as a must-watch for the old Zeuser on Sunday. It's a bit of a depressing time on that front.
I just want something that is important for playoff implications, and I am interested in this game. I really want Teddy Bridgewater to play it. I just feel like that's a better game than Skylar Thompson playing it. We will get Mike White again. It's not going to be Zach.
Remember that was a cool thing?
Yeah, maybe that.
It can be again.
He really struggled a week ago, and if he plays like that again, that's going to hurt his money, I think, in the offseason. But if he gets back to being the Mike White that you think, there's a lot of reasons to believe the Jets can win this game. Both teams are really banged up. The Jets could be short a couple offensive linemen, but the Dolphins are in worse shape. Teron Armstead, Bradley Chubb, Xavier Howard, and, of course, Tua. 4 of their very best players are all still out of practice here, and they have a chance to make the playoffs. They did not match up well against the Jets last time, and I don't know. Like I believed in the Jets too much. I'm really struggling with who to pick in this game, Dan.
Yeah. It's interesting because
I've been so wrong on the Jets. Why have I been so high on the Jets?
Here's why. Because
psychological warfare against Dan.
You're a former or still Patriots fan, but because of what your picks and the things you do connected to this network,
game day view.
You've gotten a little taste of Jets fandom this year where sometimes it doesn't even make sense. Sometimes the only thing that makes sense when it's all over and the carnage is through is the Jets blew it. And it's like, oh, well, they blew it again. They lost 5 in a row and whatever. But this year it didn't feel like this was going to happen with this team. But, yeah, there are a lot of things have happened, and it's the defense that was playing perhaps over its head for a large portion of the season, or, maybe some things and injuries kind of brought them down a little bit. But once they started playing at closer to a league average level, it really left them vulnerable because the offense has really gone in the tank. I think maybe you're right. Maybe with the pressure off of Mike White a little bit now and the team perhaps not feeling as much stress now that they're eliminated, you'll see them play at a higher level. But I also have watched enough Jets football to see this game over by the end of the first quarter, and they just pack it in. And then there are a lot of questions about what is the future of this team going forward.
Mike White, like when he's been good and when the offense has been functional, he's been a great story. But it was always a bit of a pipe dream to think that we suddenly unearthed this guy that's going to throw for 400 yards every week. I mean, he even like last year when he had his chances to start, it was a roller coaster. And this offense in general has been a roller coaster. And
he was just off last week, and maybe it was the ribs.
He was, but I am not convinced, number one, he was totally healthy. Like, I mean, he suffered such punishment when he last played before that. But, yeah, but you're going to get that game from Mike White. I think, honestly, it's probably more honest for the Jets to go into the offseason with a clear idea that they don't have a quarterback. I don't know why Robert Saleh, who I think has done a great job in general, needs to insist in that, in quotes, that through hell or high water, they're going to stick with Zach Wilson. Just don't say it. Like, you don't need to say anything at this point. Like, you have the right as a coaching staff to completely clear the deck after this because this AFC
he is
East,
being asked the question.
Yeah, I get that, but it's just
I mean, it's not nonsense, but I don't mind him doing that at all. He's sticking up for his player.
He's getting that question every press conference.
Like I said before, I think that that he's stood by Wilson. I do admire that. I just think it's just let him alone. He also said he basically told Zach Wilson, get away from football, go read books, and just clear your head.
LaFleur also said they probably shouldn't have played Wilson last year. I don't think they're really sticking by him. I think publicly they're doing a good job trying to keep the media off him.
Right.
Sticking by him is like having him play this game.
Right.
I mean, it's a meaningless game, and he's not even playing. He's not even going to be third string. Look, these two teams are competing collapses here. It's incredible to think where the Dolphins are and that they've lost 5 games in a row. They weren't able to run the ball last week against the Patriots. I thought that was really important for them, and I don't know if they're going to be able to this week, but Jets defense hasn't been as good. I went and looked up kind of the efficiency metrics during these 5-game losing streaks. Mm-hmm. They're both like bottom 8 offenses. Like Jets were 28th, Miami was 26th, and even if you took out the Zach Wilson games, the Jets are still like a bottom 6 offense in this losing streak. And the Dolphins are terrible offensively too. The surprising part for me was like the Jets defense was 12th. Like they've been fine, but they just haven't been dominant.
Special.
This is a game that in theory you could dominate the way that the Dolphins have been
we've seen
up.
cracks in their defense. The way when Skylar Thompson started back in week 5, they romped the Dolphins. It was 40-17. 2 different teams at this point, but they've both fallen off a cliff.
Yeah, that was a close game for 3 quarters, and then it got away
Here's
for
the thing.
Miami.
I know Jets fans, they don't like the Dolphins. And I'm not saying you guys are the Lions here, trying to cap off a season. It's disappointing regardless. But I really think if the Dolphins win this game, they're probably going to the playoffs. All they need is the Patriots to lose to the Bills. And so this is a big game for the Jets can knock out the Dolphins.
Saleh can do it to his friend Mike McDaniel. He said he'd rather be on a beach with him a week from now, not seeing the Dolphins in the playoffs.
Knock out the Dolphins.
I'm sure there's 35,000 feet above the ground Jets fans that are like, oh, lose the game, get in the top 10 in the draft and all that. Nah.
No.
Let's end the season. That overall was a positive one. And then turn sour with a nice win. The one thing that the Jets need to figure out is, and this is carrying over through the regimes, they need to figure out how to identify and develop a quarterback. They cannot do it. They've gotten bad luck as part of the Jets story as well. They've never fallen into a Burrow or a Herbert or a Lawrence in all of these years of struggles. But they need to take a closer look at how they do this because I don't think they handled Wilson right. He was raw. He was green as it gets, and they threw him right into the mix. Maybe it's time to start taking a closer look at how you do this
Or just
stuff.
don't do it through the draft again. Just find a veteran out there that you can trust.
There's a lot of them out there.
I thought you made a good point last week, Mark, about the Jets shouldn't, or the fan base shouldn't just say, go get Derek Carr and everything's fine. But again, it's like, which way do you go? Do you go get
You do both.
The slightly?
Do both.
Do you use a first-round pick on a quarterback and get Derek Carr?
I don't
Maybe.
know. Well, then Joe Douglas is on a ticking clock if he picks another quarterback that doesn't essentially shine immediately.
They're all on a ticking clock next year.
He is anyways.
Yeah.
He is anyways.
All right.
I'm going to take the Rams Seahawks as the late game. There's not really a great 425 slate.
420, man.
When I saw that it's my guy Geno Smith and then our guy Marc Sanchez.
Our guy.
I don't know. It's our guy. I don't know why I said
our collective guy.
He was my guy before he was
It's our guy Sanchez on the call. That's a good way to cap the season
nice.
here. and it's probably the last Seahawks game of the year, so I can just enjoy it, you know. And
why do you say that? You're presuming that the
playoff
Packers
team.
win on. You pick the Lions.
It's true. If my picks are right,
it's going to be
it will not
annoying
be.
if the Lions have a great emotional win on Sunday Night Football, but the Seahawks, who have had a nice season, all due respect, are the team that ends up going to the playoffs. But that is very possible.
Greg, just to let you know, your picks aside, like Earth might suggest that Seattle goes to the playoffs, not just what you picked. Like
good. I guess I said that because if you just look at the percentages, you need 2 results to happen. It's more likely that they don't go to the playoffs. They have an under 50% chance. Because I also don't totally hand them this win. I think that's the part of the equation that Seahawks fans, when they're talking about the Sunday Night Football, haven't been focused on. But Sean McVay's generally owned Pete Carroll. I do put something into these division matchups, and I think you can only look 4 weeks ago to the matchup where the Seahawks had to win with a last-second touchdown to beat the Rams, who were starting John Wolford that day, and say, like, okay, there's something here in terms of the matchups that, like, this isn't some incredible mismatch. The good thing is Seattle's defense has played better again the last couple of weeks. I just don't know what to think of this defense. Maybe it's just unpredictable. It's game plan specific. They had Al Woods back, which you wouldn't think like makes all the difference, but he's been really good stopping the run, and that makes everything else look a little better. I definitely picked the Seahawks in this game. They're home. Geno steady. Ken Walker's out there kind of looking like Saquon Barkley. That's who he reminds me of a lot. Like that lateral thing, and the fact that he'll take big losses and kind of go sideways looking for the big play. But you know what? He finds the big play.
Hey, you know what? That's actually a pretty good nickname for Geno this year. Geno steady. I was looking at it because he's got 29 touchdowns, by the way. He throws one more, and he joins, let me get this right, Dave Craig and Russell Wilson is the only Seattle quarterbacks ever to throw 30 in a season. I was going through his game log this week before, doing power rankings, and he had a streak at one point of 7 straight games where he threw exactly 2 touchdowns. Like, he has been a guy that, and I mean, especially what I've witnessed with my team this year, man, there's something of true value to have a guy like you kind of know what your quarterback's going to give you. He's not going to be Mahomesian, but he's also not going to lay eggs, and that's what Geno's been for them this year. I want to now hashtag analysis, Mark. This is some real football guy analysis.
All right.
Baker Mayfield has been the quarterback of the Rams for 4 weeks now, okay? The first week, fun Baker. The second week, regular or bad Baker. The third week, fun Baker. The fourth week, regular/bad Baker. Fifth week feels like fun Baker.
I think what a better way for Baker Mayfield to
see how I'm doing on and off, on and off.
I mean, he's been up and down everywhere he's been, and it's like the ups with the Rams have been better than any other ups. So why not finish the year this way? One I don't love for them in general is that I think like Cam Akers, another guy who has been on a roller coaster ride in the doghouse, suddenly being used extensively in the penthouse now. So it's the same thing, the up and the down. The Seahawks' run defense, which was a disaster for so long, they have not allowed 80-plus yards on the ground in 4 straight weeks. So it's the Al Woods thing. Who knows? But they're much better. That was like – you still see it's like, oh, they're 30th in rushing. Well, they haven't been in the last quarter of the season. So that – like if you put Baker Mayfield into a situation where he's got to throw, I think the last week he really struggled in like typical easier quick passes, which you see Baker Mayfield just miss on short yardage throws where it could really help the Rams, and he's done better at like improbable throws downfield. So the one thing I love about Geno Smith, this would be the most poetic end to the year, and he's going to do this, barring disaster. He needs 151 passing yards to pass Russell Wilson for the single season franchise record in yardage.
Crazy.
I love that.
I guess he gets an extra game, but still.
Well,
that's
who cares about that?
And they never let Russ cook. They let Geno cook.
I mean, I think it's an amazing way to end it for him.
If the Titans shock the Jags on Saturday, I'll be kicking myself I didn't lock up Geno in a big spot here against a bad Rams team.
Do it.
You're constantly wrestling with the locks, and
I like to give you my internal monologue.
I know, I definitely need it.
Winning. By the way, the West Bros, Nick Wessling, it's really Nick at this point, who we almost heard from Monday night, but we will hear from him at some point during the Cincinnati upcoming playoff run, locked up the Seahawks, by the way.
Look at that.
The old Zeuser, the god of bongo. I will take
first week all season. I don't think you've had the Jets.
It is. It is. They're
Sorry
my
for
favorite
that.
team.
You left me no other good.
No.
Good choices
I
there.
in no way do I
and they're
have any
eliminated.
issue with that.
Yeah, they're
You can
eliminated.
still watch them if you
In
want.
no way do I take issue with it. No umbrage taken.
Thanks, Dad.
Umbrage. Umbrage. I will take the Giants at the Eagles. And it's not a game I'm like on fire about because, well, look at the rest of the games. Not a lot of great meat on the bone at this point from a narrative standpoint. We'll get to narrative in just a second, by the way. The Giants are locked into the 6th seed. Doesn't matter what happens against the Eagles here. So there's a very good chance they're going to rest players. Certainly, it behooves them to give Saquon a blow here and not have him getting a lot of workload with the playoffs coming up. Daniel Jones coming off arguably the best game of his career. He's going to want to tune up, but maybe he doesn't play either. He doesn't play a lot. I don't know. If there's an update on that end, I apologize for not already knowing.
There isn't.
Okay, good.
Actually, Daboll's –
He wouldn't talk. He wouldn't say.
he's changed his tune, though. Immediately after the game, he's like, everyone's playing. And then he was like, oh, we'll decide on Friday. So I think it's trending
I think
towards
even
not
if,
playing.
even if they start, I think you're going to see early pulling you out of there. Like, give them rest, especially Saquon.
So here's why this game, though, is compelling to me. I got to see the Eagles play well here going into the playoffs. That was woof. I watched that game on Monday, the Saints-Eagles game, and I was like, oh, woof.
Mm-hmm.
Woof, woof, woof. That first half was grisly by Philadelphia, and I understand Jalen Hurts is out of the lineup, and I understand he's trending towards playing in this game, which makes a lot of sense to me, especially because they still haven't locked up the number 1 seed. But they had 61 total yards in the first half against the Saints, and I know the Saints are playing better now, but come on. They didn't have their first down in the game until 12 seconds remained in the contest. The Saints outplayed them in every phase at the link, and then, of course, they get back in the game, and then it gets washed away on a hideous pick 6 by Gardner Minshew. Great play by Marshawn Lattimore, of course, but that was not a good throw or a good decision by the backup QB. So Philly, go have a good get-right game. Jalen Hurts, get through the game with that shoulder feeling good. Grab the number 1 seed once and for all, and then feel good about yourself as you head into the bye to get fully healthy.
I mean, it would be, I think a couple weeks ago, like, we just assumed the Eagles would win one of these games and do what they needed to do, and there was a lot of, especially the Dallas game, gave you hope that Gardner Minshew would not take a step back.
Last week they were, quote-unquote, supposed to win that game.
Right, and
the Dallas game, maybe not. Last week was surprising.
But the Dallas game was I came out of that thinking, their offense won't change that much with Minshew, and it completely changed. We go, I think that, like, the idea that he was sacked 6 times by the Saints, the Lane Johnson absence matters, whether it's Hurts or Minshew. I tend to think that they're going to be on offense fine once Hurts comes back. I just do. I think that you've still got all the same weapons there. The Lane Johnson thing concerns me, but it would be an epic collapse to not beat a Giants team that probably will be resting a variety of players left and right. You got to handle it, because to come out of this as the number 2 seed, or some situation where the Cowboys wind up as the number 1, which is especially unappealing if you're an Eagles fan, is about as ugly a narrative, Dan, as you could finish the season with.
Narrative.
Forget narrative. How about reality? You'd be the 5 seed on the road
There'll be
next
a lot
week.
of
suddenly.
Cowboys narratives and everything else.
It's not happening, though. I mean, this thing should be a total
Did you think they were going to lose to the
bloodbath.
Saints?
This is different. The Giants are worse than the Saints IMO. And
another IMO from you. Also, come on now.
Worse than the Saints?
Giants
right
are
now.
playing really good football right now.
But more importantly, the Giants, I don't think are going to be playing to win
42 and 46.
I don't think they're going to be playing to win this game.
Well, that matters
The
more.
Eagles absolutely waxed this same Giants team. It wasn't that long ago. And they're 14-point favorites because of that. Because we know the Giants.
Eagles got juice right now?
What does that mean?
Is there a juice deficiency right now? I feel there's a little bit of a juice deficiency.
They bring the juice back, though, this week.
Okay. You're probably right.
They
probably
have
right.
C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Robert Quinn, not this week, but they are looking like they're going to come back for the playoffs too. Gardner-Johnson matters a lot. They've given up one of the worst passer ratings around without him.
Yeah, and Avonte Maddox, too. So those are 2 guys in the middle of the defense. No, it's totally about that the Giants don't have anything to play for, and
Sure.
I think they could be playing who is their backup right now?
Tyrod?
Danny Cannell.
It's a good backup.
And Danny Cannell, who I think they've just signed off of. He's working in the construction site in central Pennsylvania.
I think he made his money in the 90s. Speaking of narratives.
2 decades ago.
People were, on some level on Twitter, a little surprised that we didn't get after Kayvon Thibodeau too hard after the Snow Angel incident and gave it to him a little bit.
We don't need
our
to.
old friend, but I thought he was showing his ass a little bit this week. Here is Kayvon talking about Jeff Saturday's comments about the sack celebration and the go to sleep gesture on the sideline by Kayvon. Jeff Saturday, interim coach of the Colts, said it was trash and not classy. And here was Kayvon Thibodeau's response to the media.
That's what I'm saying. Who's the gatekeeper of when to do something? So once we figure out who the gatekeeper is, then we can write the rules and then we can establish, the narratives and things like that. But until, you guys actually are in the sport and do it and be in that moment, you can't create a narrative on it,
Well, we're not creating a narrative on it. The other team's coach had a problem with it. He's the guy who played the game. The other team's players
I don't
had
know
a problem
who he is.
with it.
No, I just don't know who, anybody who comments on it, unless I know who they are, doesn't really affect me. That's it.
He sounds like
I kind of love it.
He lives in his own bubble, Kayvon, and you could say you love it, but it's like Jeff Saturday is a 4-time All-Pro, a 6-time Pro Bowler. He's a Super Bowl champion.
Yeah, but I've seen a lot of people kind of bring all that stuff up. Do you really think the majority of players know who the hell Jeff Saturday is?
What I'm saying is,
do you have to approach it that way?
What my point is, Greg, is that it just feels like to me that Kayvon Thibodeau kind of lives in his own world, and if you aren't in Kayvon's world, you don't really matter. And it shows a lack, I think, to me, of kind of understanding of where he stands. I thought it was interesting that the current center of the Colts, took Kayvon to task on Sunday after the game, saying, hey, man, like injuries are part of the game, and he'll learn that one day, that it's not something you ever celebrate. And then I think especially in light of what happened Monday night, like with Hamlin, it's just like, man, you got to show a little more awareness about what the context of the world is. And my radar's up now a little bit on Thibodeau. He's a fantastically talented young player. But I wonder when things aren't going to – and there's a time when things aren't going well for the Giants, or maybe there's some contract stuff going on. If he's one of those guys that starts bouncing around the league despite being very talented, would not surprise me. All right, welcome back. Mark, you are up next in the drive.
All right, I'm going to go Cleveland-Pittsburgh. The Steelers, and I'm not doing it because of Cleveland, by the way. Pittsburgh, who I've been tracking this for a while, just thinking this whole idea that Mike Tomlin's going to end up with a winning record after all they've been through, it's happening. They're going to knock off the Browns on Sunday. And number one, I'll get this out of the way. I am ultra confident about the fact that it will happen. I am locking up the Pittsburgh Steelers. What? I'm going to do it until they're taken out of the league, because this team will not be denied right now. There's something special about the Steelers team. They'll be unwatchable on offense for 2+ quarters, and then Kenny Pickett weeks in a row. It's like, I don't think Kenny Pickett is a perfect quarterback, but for where he is at his career as a rookie, it's pretty amazing what he's done. And just sort of like we talked about the vibe of Kayvon. The vibe of Kenny Pickett to me is like, I'm going to put the Steelers team on my back when it matters at the end of a game. This entire offense is developing and growing. They're a much different team than the one that faced the Browns on Thursday Night Football earlier in the year. They can run the ball well now. You can run on the Cleveland Browns. I think through the air, Pickett's going to do something every game with Pickens, DeAndre, and this team to me is a team that is going to be in the conversation. They have a chance at the playoffs. I think Cleveland is ripe for the picking in this situation defensively. The Browns with Deshaun Watson, that second half was a pivot for them on offense, because if you look at their first half, Deshaun had 4 sacks and 3 completions. They were an absolute mess, and you started to see it down the stretch. So if you get that for a full game, that will be a challenge. But if you look at the Steelers defense, and it's not just because TJ Watt's on the field necessarily, but they were essentially 1-6 without him, and they're 7-2 since. They've allowed 17 or fewer points in 6 straight games. That's the longest streak for this Steelers defense, which has been awesome for as long as we've known each other. The longest streak for them since 2004. It's legit. They're real. I think they can shut down Cleveland. I think they're playing for something. They're playing for a lot. Their coach themselves, their playoff chances, and I just like the way they developed over this year. It's great coaching.
I agree. I think we could see them in the playoffs next week. So all they need is the Dolphins to lose against the Jets. I give the Jets a slight edge in that game if Teddy's out. and then the Patriots to lose. And then
that's very
Steelers
possible,
win,
right?
and they're in. So Steelers, I think they'd be a more fun playoff team. They are playing better, I think, than the Dolphins and the Patriots right now. Kenny Pickett pulls off a lot of low percentage plays, which is not what you necessarily expected out of him. He's been inconsistent, but has a knack for it. They're very similar teams. The Browns' defense is playing better. Both teams can run. Certainly only one has Nick Chubb. I think the difference is you expected Watson to make some sort of positive difference. And I keep hearing well, he's just coming back. He hadn't played football in 2 years. This 5-game stretch he's had is worse than any 5-game stretch he's ever played football. I mean, by far, since we've ever seen him. Going back to Clinton.
Did he miss 700 days at any stretch before that?
No, but you also gave him the contract of better than Patrick Mahomes, better than Josh Allen. At some point, you would expect, I guess I would. I mean, I know it's a lot of time not playing football, but he's shown virtually no progress. I know that he had a couple throws in that game. It was 3 or 4 throws. He had 9 completions total, and 3 or 4 of them were screens and dump-offs. So I would expect to see something because it's not like he hasn't been training. It's not like he didn't do this. The bar is so low.
It didn't rise to your level on this, but he did lead them on 3 consecutive touchdown drives in the second half. It's not like he's Watson.
When I went back to watch that game, I was expecting something, and it was basically good field position and guy in a couple throws and guys making plays after the catch. There wasn't anything in particular in that game that was any better than the other games.
I mean, you could argue the better trade the Browns made was for Amari Cooper, who has worked out and finally showed some chemistry.
Wait, why do we have to have any final judgment at any level?
It's not a final judgment, but
Watson
but why?
now.
So if let's say
I just mean I think they would like it if the guy that they're paying way more than Patrick Mahomes didn't have the worst 6-game stretch of his career the second he came back. I think they would like that.
Dan, I don't think it's in any way it's not a fatal blow if he has another bad game and you go into the offseason. But here's the thing, Jarrett Stidham hasn't played that much. Brock Purdy barely played. You're practicing. Deshaun Watson practiced for weeks and weeks before coming in here. He played in the preseason. It's
even just some flashes of big playmaking. He hasn't looked remotely like the player he was.
No,
so I think that has to be concerned.
But if you put together a good game and coming off those, they weren't great, Greg, but they were better than his other
If they won
quarters.
this game against Pittsburgh, I think they would love that.
I think inside the building, they would like that.
I think obviously they would have loved if he hit the ground running and was Deshaun Watson of his peak Texan days. And remember, he's still after his own mess of his own creation. Let's not ever forget that. That was just as he was essentially entering his prime. He's still a young 20-something quarterback who I think it's more likely he kind of gets back to that level than not. I don't think the Browns signed up and made that trade and changed the way people viewed their franchise and gave all that guaranteed money to him, expecting him to be that guy this year.
No, they didn't.
Everything is kind of built towards 2023 and beyond. So, while I totally agree with you, he has not been good. I don't see it personally as a warning sign or something uh-oh, what's going on here. But I see the other side of it. You could look at it from that point that it has been underwhelming.
There's just another universe where 2 weeks in he did look good. He did get up to speed. He hasn't been frozen in carbonite. He's been practicing, moving around, and operating and working with players on the team.
How much is Jacoby Brissett plays here and there? I don't know. You would have liked to seen more. He's played at a total worst case scenario level, and weirdly I feel like that's not everyone's kind of understanding that he's basically been Carson Wentz. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is I'm just surprised.
What did you think of him before any of this happened as a player?
That he was sort of in that 5 to 10
top
quarterback
6-7
range.
That's what the Browns obviously signed up for.
And I think and you're right, Dan. It's not no one's sitting around hammering the panic button. It's just that I think you want to see them close out on offense on a strong note against the Steelers, and I think it's a tough ask.
It's a big game for them, and to your point of them, they don't have as much to play for. That was the case for them last week, and they stomped on the Commanders. Good defensive game, good complete game.
Let me fast forward to the end of September. Mm-hmm. If this is still the same guy, then I'm oh crap.
Yeah, I think
there's an issue going on here.
Fair. Yep.
And would there be a bit of karmic justice if that's what Deshaun Watson was now?
Yes, there would be.
Perhaps a bit. Mark, it's snakes to you.
All right, going to pick a late game. want to pick a team that I'd love to watch week after week, and that's the Niners. Squaring off against a team that
Squaring off. I like that. Underrated matchup.
Sure.
Well,
you got to find different ways to describe what's happening at this point in the draft. A team that needs to get out of our lives as quickly as possible, and that includes on home box office, like the Arizona Cardinals. Just vanished.
You guys are still watching that?
No, I'm not. Greg,
home box office.
Greg and I had our podcast. That
no,
we had
I
set
actually
up,
did. I didn't watch the last episode, but I actually did mostly catch up.
How many people know that HBO actually is home box office? Like what percentage?
I think now anyone listening to this would probably be the entirety of the percentage.
Dun, 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 dun. Remember that song? Dun, dun, dun,
Dallas.
Dun, dun, dun. Oh, is that Dallas? I thought that was the old HBO
Dallas.
theme. Somebody knows what I'm talking about. It's somewhat close, but I'm wrong.
That's another great theme.
Dallas that aired on CBS.
I got to find this old HBO theme.
I mean,
Go ahead.
If the
Arizona...
let's
fast forward throughout these games. We really have been
all right,
slow.
but imagine if the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, I get Cliff Kingsbury he's in boiling hot water right now. Probably gone. Who knows? We don't have any strong hints at the moment. But he has had to deal with 4 different quarterbacks. I think most coaches would be in hot water. Then you look at the Niners, though, and it's like Shanahan's had to deal with 3, and they have like 100 passer rating no matter who's playing as a team. I mean, it's been like a pretty incredible story for Shanahan to develop Purdy, another guy that just like out of nowhere, he wasn't even in the league a year ago. He's the last pick in the draft. He comes in and he's looked incredible. And I just think his chemistry with Brandon Ayuk, especially with George Kittle. Kittle has been incredible with Purdy, like 5 touchdowns in the last 3 starts. It's more than he had for the first 14 games of the year. Their defense is on fire. I think they got a little flat. They were caught a little flat-footed against Jarrett Stidham in the way that game went. I think if you had a better idea like the Chiefs do of what Stidham might be doing, maybe you don't get that game again. I give them a bit of a mulligan, but from top to bottom, this Niners team, I think John Lynch deserves some credit because you were the guy that found a way after all the offseason drama to keep Jimmy Garoppolo. You needed him. You also drafted Brock Purdy. You saw something in him. I know you didn't draft him high, or you couldn't have drafted him any lower, so I'm not giving you a blue medal for that. But the Charvarius Ward signing, a blue ribbon, you went out and got Dre Greenlaw extended, and you made a trade for Christian McCaffrey that changed your offense.
Greg, I'll ask you this. All good points, Mark. Because you have said that the AFC teams are all better than the Niners.
Which AFC teams? The top 3?
That's the big 3. Have you seen any real drop-off in this offense from Garoppolo to Purdy?
No, they've been better.
They've been better.
Like, that is interesting to me because what if the quarterback play, everything else San Francisco has going for it, and I'm throwing out the 500 yards they gave up this past week. It happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Football's weird. If the quarterback play was better, and then Deebo Samuel comes back, I still like their chances, Greg, against anybody in the league.
I just wouldn't. It's not some crazy difference. I just am making them like a field goal underdog when one has like a Hall of Fame level quarterback and the other doesn't.
The other has Patrick Mahomes. Brock Purdy's been a great.
He hasn't been that level though. See, so he's been an interesting guy. Where like if you look at his PFF scores, for instance, he is among the most consistent quarterbacks in the league, and he's at a really high level. It's like 69 to 79 in his grade, which for their grades is like a better than average starting quarterback, essentially. Somewhere in the 15 to 10 range. And he's just been steady that guy every week. And that's kind of matches up with what my eyes are showing me. Like
missed a couple throws last week.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like that's why he's not higher.
And overcame that too, though. Yeah. Like, I think it's actually good to make a mistake and see how he responds. And he did.
And that's why he's not like higher. That's why he's not a top 10 quarterback, and he's not like always creating his own plays like a star like Jarrett Stidham. But he's very steady. And you're right. You get Deebo back. It's a great, great team. This is a great spot because I think they would love to sit Christian McCaffrey for the second half of this game. Play Deebo Samuel for like 15 to 20 snaps, but not get carried away. Get like a 3 or 4 score lead because they do want to win this game, but they're playing at the same time. I'm getting scrambled here. They don't really have anything.
But if the Eagles lose, they have a chance at the number 1 seed still.
Right, but they're playing at the same time. That's what I was trying to get to. As the Eagles, and so they're scoreboard watching. The Eagles are playing the Giants.
If that got out of hand.
If the Eagles are up 3 scores here, but even if the Eagles aren't up 3 scores, you can win this game with Jordan Mason. you don't need to give Christian McCaffrey 30 carries.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're playing the worst team in the league.
McCaffrey looks as good to me as he's ever looked.
He's a great player, dog.
Tough ball player.
Tough ball player, dog. All right, let's move on. I'll grab Vikings at Bears. Not a lot going on here just in terms of the matchup because Justin Fields, who's got the hip, he won't play in Week 18, so that's not happening. There's a bunch of players for Chicago out of the lineup, but you take Fields out, they lose every week anyway. This is more just like a straight test for the Vikings. Can
they win a 2-score game?
Yeah.
Can they just kick the crap out of the Bears here? As they must. They absolutely must. Coming off another very sobering, eyebrow-raising blowout loss, this time to the Packers at Lambeau. Just absolutely destroy the Bears. Go up by 20 at halftime. Get some guys out of the lineup. Set a couple team records with Jefferson or Cousins. Get to, 30 touchdowns. Whatever you need to do to polish some things up. And then sit down and then get ready for the playoffs and what's obviously going to be a first-round matchup that will be close, most likely, maybe even against the Giants in a rematch. So not a ton of intrigue in terms of the competition here. It should be Vikings in a roll, but I'm taking the game in part because that's not how Viking games have worked this year. So maybe we'll get another strangely, bizarrely competitive, fun game to watch.
You could. I would think that they'd need to make a ton of mistakes and have somehow Chicago's defense generate points because the drop-off from Justin Fields to Nathan Peterman is like literally insane. And I do feel that for Fields because he had, I think, a legitimate chance if he went off in this game to break Lamar's ground record, and that's not going to happen. But I get what they're doing because like he's got a hip. Yeah. You could tell he was banged up in that game last week, and it's like why even mess with it? Who cares about the record? Like get him into the offseason and spend this offseason surrounding him with weapons the way that we've seen other young quarterbacks.
Look at the Lions. This team could be competitive and fun next year with a good offseason.
He took some big hits last week. He's been playing through stuff. That said, they know they have a good chance to get that number 1 draft pick.
Oh, yeah.
Texans Colts is a very winnable game.
Oh, yes.
For the Texans. And you get old Peterman here. Let's not have any funny business against this Vikings team. Let's go get that number 1 pick. And, oh, by the way, we don't need a quarterback. We don't need Bryce Young.
Nope.
Best place to be.
For sale.
You trade that pick.
Oh, my God. Like, they would have options, and we'll talk about it in the offseason. It would be somehow – not karmic. What's the word? Just like a nice bookend to the season that a
cosmic ballet.
Convincing Vikings win of the season was Week 1 against the Packers. And then you wrap it up heading into the playoffs,
nice.
Week 18, and you start feeling good about yourselves.
If I were the Texans, I would start my long snapper at quarterback. Let's not mess around
The
here.
scenario you're suggesting has Houston winning a meaningless game. I'm
picking them to win this game.
God, they can't be that dumb.
Until last week.
Wait, are we doing that game? Is that your pick? Up next, Greg.
It's not. But
you could have. That would have been a perfect
seg.
Right?
And we could kind of roll through the end of this.
We already talked about them for an hour, like a minute and a half there.
But then I would have to watch that game, and I never plan to watch that game.
No one's going to hold it against you.
Not putting that on Game Pass.
Just watch the highlights.
Why would you need to watch Houston, Indianapolis at Game Pass after
Justin's
Week
even
18?
volunteering.
OCD.
Whenever Justin has, I could watch the Colts lose to the Texans.
That could be your Justin game.
Yeah, give it to me, Greg.
Throw it to old Greg.
Because we're still talking about those two teams.
We're still talking about this at this
point.
Come
on, for the sake of the show. Showmanship, Greg.
Hey,
showmanship. There he is.
Hello, my baby. Hello.
Get a little
That seminar is coming up in the offseason, by the way.
The Colts went 31 straight drives until Sam Ehlinger took the ball in garbage time.
Sell it.
When it didn't matter against the Giants last week. Well, this is not selling it.
Oh.
This is making fun of the Colts.
Oh, that's fine.
31 straight drives without a touchdown before a garbage time touchdown last week. That's a lot of drives. 31. So you can't tell me the Texans are some huge underdog in this game?
Nope, they're not.
No.
Okay, that's all.
That's why the long snapper needs to play quarterback for the Texans. Who is the long snapper of the Texans? Let me look them up.
They're already playing 2 quarterbacks week after week. Just make it a third and say it's part of our plan. And the third guy, the long snapper, will take.
The Colts have been
outscored,
snaps. By the way, this season, even before including the right games, which were more competitive. They were 3-3-1, by the way, when Irsay blew this team up. But
all right,
slightly fraudulent.
Their point differential is worse than the Texans this season.
The Texans long snapper is from Baylor.
Yeah.
My wife's alma mater. He is 5'10", 242 pounds, 36-year-old John Weeks. We get Weeks. Now, it's going to take some roster maneuvering. You're going to make sure he gets on the depth chart so you can send him up the depth chart. But you get John Weeks at quarterback. He is he went to college in Texas. He is now a Houston player.
No. That's not what you do.
What?
You start Davis Mills. You break out every single big play that you've ever had, and Lovie Smith walks out of the building with two double birds to everyone. I dare you to fire another coach after 1 year, and I just ruined your number 1 seed, jerks.
I like that.
I mean, that would be an evil conclusion for the Texans fans.
And the best thing
they would deserve it, though.
The
frankly.
Texans fans would?
The Texans organization, who did not cover themselves in glory and lost some money on top of other things when they handled the Deshaun Watson thing, let's give it to the Bears.
And
if they fired Lovey,
I don't think the fans
I'm
deserve
not as negative about like them. If they kept Lovey, the whole like David Culley, Lovey, Jack Easterby, Deshaun Watson. I mean, this isn't exactly a lovable organization.
No,
right
no, it's not.
And the only thing I'll say on the Colts side, at the risk of circling back to the Kayvon Thibodeau situation, is Jeff Saturday
it was tense before.
also had said 2 things annoyed me about that situation. Kayvon being trash in that spot, and my offensive line not defending my quarterback.
I think he's totally right about that point.
Man, is there anything that is right about this Colts team? It's we would need to ask Zach Kiefer, someone that tracks this team closely over the years, but is there ever been a more depressing Colts
We called
season?
it the worst Colts team he's ever followed.
They
but I
are
do like Saturday calling out, at least, you know what, if he's gone too, call him out for something that's right. They should have been there for him.
They are the definition of moribund, and if they lose at home to the Texans, that will be one of the most moribund facilities that we've seen all season. They will let them hear it.
It's been a dark campaign.
All right, let's move on. Chargers, Broncos.
How about the Commanders, by the way, sending 2 third-round picks to the Colts to get Carson Wentz?
Wait, we haven't even picked
doing?
Commanders, Cowboys, by the way. Somehow Texans, Colts got taken before that.
Well, it's Snake Steel. Go ahead.
I'm taking Chargers, Broncos just because of strategy. That's just what I want. This game might not have any playoff implications because the Ravens play earlier, and if that's the case, the Chargers are expected to sit a lot of their best players. Brandon Staley said essentially that. He said it without saying it, but he indicated pretty strongly that based on the earlier results, we'll be smart about things. So that could mean Chase Daniel being at quarterback for the Chargers, no Derwin James, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, like all the guys that you would think. The Broncos are actually favored in this game now based on that press conference, I believe. Now, if the Ravens do win early, which is not crazy, I think the Chargers are going to play. I think they've made it clear that they want to try to get that 5 seed. So it's a weird spot. There was no right way for the NFL to do this just based on the timing of everything, and that happened on Monday night.
I will say, like, of some of these AFC teams, we got a couple of teams who are going to back into the playoffs in about as fierce a fashion as possible. The way that the Chargers have played since Williams and they've had their wideouts back, Keenan Allen as well. Like they've been 4-0 since that time. Their offense has looked completely different to me. They finally crossed the 30-point barrier a week ago. They're running the ball really well. They have Joey Bosa back on defense.
That was the first time they scored 30 points all year?
No, since week 5 or something.
Okay.
You could tell they've been a pent-up offense. We went through the Justin Herbert injury situation. They're finally healthy. It's just like, all right, maybe this Chargers team for once can hit the postseason with the right foot. Until it's like they've always been a team that you're counting on to essentially go 1-out in the playoffs in these situations. Staley, I think, has proven himself as a coach on defense. Their defense has been altered and shown of late, and so I like the situation for them.
Well, they're usually better than their record, and this year maybe the reverse is true. They actually, like Chargers fans, always think they have the worst luck in the world. I think they've been a little fortunate. They were a little fortunate to be at 6-6 when they got there. Kind of got a little lucky. Even their coach admitted it. And then they kind of faced the Titans. And not that they didn't earn those wins against the Titans and Dolphins, but they got them
at a good time.
At the right time. And then a nice, easy schedule. And you know what? The Chargers deserve a little good luck. And I think we'll all enjoy seeing Justin Herbert in the playoffs.
Will be fun. All right, let's take a break, and we'll finish out the draft. All right, we're back, and I will grab that NFC East affair with the next pick in the draft. Dallas at Washington. Tutty the Pig in his final appearance of
this season. What a season it's been for,
what a ride.
For it.
It would be funny if it, monster that it is, got wiped away by a new regime.
Yeah.
The ownership was like, no, we don't want the pig that got introduced at halftime of Week 17. We're going to do a different mascot. And then he exists as this incredibly minor footnote in world history, like a 2-week half-human, half-pig mascot.
Yeah, probably like hanging out
Private
at
pork, as Nick Shook said.
Yeah, hanging out at like a Washington, D.C. dive bar or a Maryland dive bar, depending on where where do you house this pig?
A footnote similar to the Carson Wentz Week 17 start that Ron Rivera decided to give that ended everyone's career. I hope it's not a footnote.
Sam Howell will start for the Commanders in a meaningless game. Well, not for Sam Howell, and perhaps not for Ron Rivera. But the Commanders are eliminated. The Cowboys, believe it or not, still have a path to the number 1 seed in the NFC if everything broke in their way. So they get it if they take care of business against the Commanders, and then the Eagles lose to the Giants, and the 49ers lose to the Cardinals. I'm just saying that's the path. But you can – it's something as simple as – and this would be stunning. If the Eagles lost to the Giants – and the Cowboys won, they win the NFC East and get the home game.
That is not that's not a crazy. The number 1 seed where
if
San
the Giants
Francisco
were starting their
Arizona,
starters,
please.
I would say at least there's a shot of it. It feels like this is the Cowboys are going to be where the Cowboys are as the top wild card seed, but crazier things have happened.
I hope it doesn't work out this way, but looking at this 5-pack of 425 games, we could have a Chargers game playing backups, 49ers and Eagles just whitewashing, and if their opponents. And I think the Cowboys will absolutely be scoreboard watching, and if the Eagles are up by 3 or 4 touchdowns, I think they'll start sitting their starters.
Yeah,
it might not be a great little sequence. That's why I've been watching Gino.
Low ebb for drama, but the NFL season tells us that one of those situations is going to go totally haywire, if not 2 or 3 of them.
Ooh, nice. Sell it, company man.
I'm not being a company man. It's just I actually wouldn't mind if it's just a nice, neat, everything's nice and neat, but it's not going to be that way because every one of these games,
You're probably right,
let's
bud.
be real here.
And there was a report, Jeremy Fowler, the team had expected the Washington Commanders to go with Taylor Heineke on Sunday, but that changed when Heineke told the coaches that it should be rookie Sam Howell instead, as Heineke felt that Howell was deserving of playing a full game.
That
First of all,
feels not true to me. But
well, if that's true, good on Taylor Heineke. What a class act.
I guess.
But in reality, I just think it's a further illustrates to me that the Washington football team needs to reboot the whole thing, including quarterback, including head coach, and above that as well.
It's not working. I kind of am interested to see Sam Howell. That was interesting in the preseason.
Sure, but
I hate
he's
that
a
report.
5th-round pick.
I don't like that
right.
report. Here's what I guess happened here. Heineke was benched. He was extremely upset.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to start. And I'm just speculating. And then this story comes out. I don't like it. That's all I'm saying.
Greg, so
a little bit of a spin job is what it sounds like.
It is a spin job, but there were Reggie Ragland.
Oh, yeah, I really believe in Howell.
Reggie Ragland from the Browns, who knows a bunch of players on Washington, basically said after they lost to the Browns that I know guys over there, and they all wanted Heineke to start. We talked about this with Carson Wentz. I think you blew up the locker room with that one. I do. I think that was a messy move.
I totally agree. I was saying it wasn't crazy for me to start Wentz. I was obviously wrong. Wentz played the worst game I think any Commanders quarterback has played all year. He completely collapsed. And I wouldn't mind Heineke saying, no, I'm not starting, guys.
Yep.
You bench me. I don't like if someone from the Heineke camp is putting this out there after the fact. That's what I wouldn't like. I would respect him saying, no, thanks.
I don't know how big of a camp he has, but
but I'm sure
he's got a camp putting out these Air Jordan.
But you know what? He is a totally fair to be extremely annoyed with what happened.
That'd be fine.
Plus.
I don't need to hear that you want to see Sam Howell start.
But they have professional reporters down there covering that team, including the Washington Post.
They're all over it.
All over this team. And someone's going to follow up with Ron Rivera and say, hey, is it true that you were going to start Heineke and then he volunteered that he didn't want to play? Unless Ron Rivera is then going to carry the Heineke camp's water, that doesn't quite pass the mustard test either. I'm just saying, like, if that's a phony spin job, that could easily get blown up just by asking the head coach if it's true.
Or
right?
This is like the least important story that I'm totally fascinated by, and we need to find out. We need a reporter to do
Or Rivera's like, wait, there is a game this week? Like,
exactly. I don't know if Ron...
the coach shouldn't need to know that. He's in his bunker.
What now, Greg? What?
Well,
go ahead. The floor is yours.
No, it's more of these articles. Like, I'm seeing it everywhere. Like, Taylor Heineke with a great gesture. It's just like...
I thought you were going to get on us for being too critical of Ron Rivera, who is a lion of a man, but perhaps it's time.
All I needed for
Ron
Rivera was that video of him telling Jeremy Reeves that he made the Pro Bowl. You guys remember that video?
It's heartwarming. Wait, you're talking about the one where it's a nice video.
That's what I mean.
Beautiful.
Like, that showed me
He's a good man.
What his players felt of him and what a guy he was.
A good guy.
Just, you root for a guy like
respected, a great player in his day.
The show's so
But perhaps it's time for the Commanders to go and take command in a different direction. I don't know.
It's fair.
Don't want to be a bad guy about it. Like Ron. Mark, finish this.
All right, Bucks at Falcons. And the Bucks could decide.
We have another one after that too, by the way.
Well, there's two more, but
just
this
load up Mark.
This is the first one
load
I'm picking.
Load up Mark's Sunday play.
Right, we'll be quick.
Bucks at Falcons. Yeah, I think this is a sleeper. I guess we're probably not going to see
It's kind of a tough week, huh?
It's a strange week, but
it's often like that week 18.
Yeah.
We'll have to wait till the playoffs to find out if the Bucks and if Brady and Mike Evans have the same connection they did last time. I thought it was a really hopeful thing. I'm not trusting that that's going to just carry over, but I have told you week after week that this Bucks team, or the winner of the South, and presumably
no, you haven't
the Bucks,
said this yet. So
well, I'm saying it again now that they will win that home playoff game. But I would say that would be an extremely foolish thing to say unless their offense shows up the way it did last week.
Well, there won't be a huge. They're going to be they're playing.
Well, that's what's so funny about this. It's not like totally maybe as the kids say, the flex you think it is. It's like that wouldn't be crazy.
I'm not saying it's the flex I think it is. It's just that I've been saying that since week 5.
Not only are you saying it, you're saying
it.
Well, you're also saying it if the offense shows up. Like, yes, of course. If the team that scored 37 points shows up, they can probably win a game as like a 2.5-point underdog.
That's not really what I'm saying at all, Greggy. It's actually that they should feel encouraged about how they looked.
Yes. I thought Tom Brady and the starters might play most of this game, but then Todd Bowles said he wants to see all three quarterbacks in this game, so I guess it's
I think it's
just in time the Evans-Brady connection coming to life. And can we just a little love for Mike Evans as like one of the great players of at his position of the last 10 years? Like that was for a guy that's on I think the other side of 30 now. The way he was just, and I know they're beat up in the secondary in Carolina with J.C. Horn out, but still like he just blowing by dudes and winning that game almost single-handedly. Shout out to Mike Evans for being that dude.
Absolutely.
Alpha wideout.
Absolutely.
Finally, Marc Sessler, the Cardinals at the Niners. Is that no?
I already did. This is the Panthers at the Saints, both
eliminated
from any further play after this game. I thought it was, the Saints showed up last week. I thought that was pretty incredible job by their defense.
What a first half, especially.
Absolutely. I mean, that's sort of the Saints. We talked about the Saints as this high variance team, and it was like some of that was like, I would rather see that version of the Saints in the postseason than a number of other teams. In general, I'd say for the Panthers, I really am rooting for Steve Wilkes to keep this job. I think he did a lot with them. They came within that one game of being a team that's going to the postseason.
Report out there?
That he's talked to the Panthers.
Well, the Tepper has.
That they've talked, and Jim Harbaugh reportedly has a very, and I feel like we've maybe heard this before, but a very strong interest in rejoining our league.
Would you rather go to because the Broncos have been linked to Jim Harbaugh too, a deal with the idea of reviving what Russell Wilson gives you, or a Panthers team that has no quarterback?
Panthers.
I think so too, because I think there's more to work with here. I think you can
get
find
more of a
quarterback.
blank slate to build your team. You're kind of hemmed in. Whoever takes that Broncos job, it's like you're hoping that Wilson bounces back. If not, you're going to get fired.
Look, Harbaugh was desperate to get a job last year, putting every media source out there that he could, and tried to interview and did interview with the Vikings.
Well, helped him get a raise too,
but he didn't get a job. This time, it seems like there's a better chance. I think this is a sneaky huge game for these two coaches. Maybe based on that, Steve Wilkes doesn't have a great chance. I do think Dennis Allen winning a fourth straight game with his defense playing really well at the end of the season will help him. But if they get blown up here by the Panthers and it's just like a wah-wah-wah ending, and they end up 7-10 and Sean Payton's looming, then I think this is a big game. It shouldn't be, but I think him winning 4 straight games would be very helpful.
Yeah, but Sean Payton going back to the Saints is another team with major quarterback issues and a total void there. I don't love that landing spot either.
They have this matchup involves the number 1 pass defense in the league, according to DVOA, versus the number 1 pass offense in the league over the last 5 weeks. What? I don't even know how that works. But it's on it's basically because it's a per throw basis, and per throw, the Panthers, when they've thrown the ball, are picking up first downs at a
Sam
nice
Darnold,
rate.
I thought outside of the turnover stuff against the Bucs, played the best game he's ever played.
I'm a sicko enough. I wish I had this game, even though it doesn't mean anything. I still love that NFC South.
Trade it.
Can't
Trade
give it up.
Get a number 1
you can have
season.
Colts Texans.
I mean, it's just
trade it for a number 2 in Week 1 in September.
I mean, you might need to talk to Nick Shook about that because it's sort of a Shook game. So you know how this works. So
okay.
But I think it's half my asset, so I can
offer a number 2 in 2023 and see if you can.
We just sit on that all off. That's building for next year. I like that.
Speaking of next year, before we sign off, here are the coaches that I feel like are in some level of peril entering Week 18 with Black Monday right around the corner. See, Zeus is bringing this up now because by Sunday night, it's easier. And some guys might be fired by then.
Yeah.
Josh McDaniels, Chiefs at Raiders. Probably fine, but just mentioning it. Texans with Lovie Smith. Colts, Jeff Saturday, obviously an intern. You have another intern, Wilkes. Panthers at Saints, Dennis Allen. Dennis Allen could really use a win to end the season on a 4-game winning streak. I don't know if Saints fans want to hear that, but I feel like he might be in good position there if they end up playing good football to close the season. The Broncos have an interim, obviously. They'll be making a change. Cliff Kingsbury, a lot of speculation that he'll be coaching his last game. I don't know if he could save his job. It doesn't matter what happens. In some of these cases, how weird football is, guys can save their jobs potentially with a win on Sunday. Not there. And finally, the aforementioned Ron Rivera. I don't know how strong that is, but also there's so much instability in that organization right now.
I think it
behooves him to win in Week 18.
I kind of think the ownership situation might play in his favor because is the owner. That's who's making that decision. Does the owner really want to make a change if they're making a change in terms of their job? And then there's always one surprise, and I would throw and I guess it's not as big a surprise if you throw names out there, but I would put the Raiders, Jets, Dolphins, Patriots, and Browns as one where there could be a surprise.
You think Belichick would just potentially leave because he's not going to do what they want him to do?
It wouldn't be a surprise.
Would not be the word for that.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a surprise if you totally saw it coming. But that one is just I don't think any of those would be totally shocking.
Let's track that.
Would you imagine I'm the coach of the Patriots following Bill Belichick? Have a good time with that. The job I don't want.
All right, we'll track it. If any one of that 5-pack has a change.
Yeah. Football. It's hard to believe how unpredictable it can be. All right. Thank you to everyone for watching, for listening. We'll be back on Sunday night with the Week 18 flagship show where we will have a full picture of the postseason. Probably. Till then, heed the call.